What was the first event that disproved your childhood belief that the world is a safe place? Some guy tried to get me into his car when I was riding my big wheel in front of our house. I'd never been told not to get in someone's car, but I'd been given the don't talk to strangers speech. I told my mom about having not talked to the stranger who tried to give me a ride, and that's when she educated me on kidnappers. Not wanting to scare me too bad at the age of 5, she picked a relatable topic by telling me that if I go with a kidnapper they will spank me. That was enough for me. Don't go into the stranger's car. They have wooden spoons especially for you. I think I was around 6 years old. I grew up in rural Lancaster County. A young woman had been attacked and abducted not too far from my house. Luckily, she found an opportunity to escape from the car, and an Amish man had helped defend her from the abductor. The person sped away and was never caught. After that, I was never allowed to ride a bike by myself or go down to the pond, and we started locking our doors at night. Don't frick with the Amish. They're actually pretty swell. On my 10th birthday party, a woman off her bipolar meds ran her car into a concrete underpass right in front of my house. The car instantly was on fire, having my birthday party go from all happiness to the smell of a burning body and panic within 30 seconds. Still bothers me 15 years later. Holy crap, that would certainly be a birthday to remember. I was about 15 working my first job at McDonald's. I was taking an order from a guy when suddenly he was shoved into my register from behind. He turns around to see another guy and out of nowhere they start brawling in front of the counter. The guy who started the fight is having the crap beaten out of him and eventually retreats and leaves the store, and the other guy simply returns to my register and keeps ordering. He said he had no idea who that guy was or why he wanted to fight. When I overheard my aunts and uncles talking about Adam Walsh, a stranger took a child that was roughly my age and cut his head off. The thing that really got me was my uncle saying God knows what else he did to him. I live in Australia, home of infamous serial killer Ivan Millett. One of his murder victims was a customer of my father, so I regularly saw her every now and then. One day I see the reports on TV and see her listed as murdered. That really hit me. Literally no one is safe. Till of Ivan Millett. My house was burgled when I was 10 and the thief broke in through my room and ransacked the house. I remember standing in my room and thinking a stranger has been through my things. My privacy felt completely invaded. My home and my room wasn't safe anymore. Nowhere was safe. I didn't sleep very well for a while after that. When I found out we had a panic room in our house, we live right in the middle of two suburban, for lack of better word, gangs, and when I was about 6, they would have regular machete fights on our driveway. I know it doesn't make sense, but the idea of being involved in a machete fight is so much more terrifying than the idea of a gunfight. Maybe it's because I've handled machetes and seen the amount of damage they can inflict, but I would rather face being shot than being chopped up. 10 years old, late 70s, walking home past the high school and watched a fight unfold between two big kids. One almost killing the other from blows to the head. No one there to break it up. Brutal. I know a lot of people who never had this belief in the first place, due to early childhood trauma. My dad had serious mental health issues and was abusive. I never felt safe as a kid. I always knew the world wasn't safe and that nobody would protect me. It's been quite hard dialing back and learning that actually it can be a safe place and that most people are pretty decent. Funny, when I started reading this thread I was thinking the exact same thing. It's strange growing up not feeling safe in your own home, but it's all we ever knew. My first memory that I can recall, until I was 6, we lived in Uvalde, TX, really close to the border of Mexico. When I was 3 or 4, I remember waking up and a man was trying to kidnap me. My mom walked through the door with a pistol in one hand and a mag light in the other. After extensive application of mag light, couldn't shoot. I was in the way. He was carted away by an ambulance and a border patrol escort. The first event I can remember that shocked me as a child was when this kid came roaring through our quiet neighborhood in his loud car and deliberately hit a dog and killed it. I happened to be playing out front in the yard with 2 of my friends. We all witnessed it. I remember just looking in disbelief, crying, because we all liked the dog so much. Why would someone do this? When my dad reacted nervously around an aggressive stranger. Up until this point, I'd encountered weird people and situations, but my parents had remained calm. This one time, I was about 6, 7, 8 and my dad and I were fishing in a stream and some guy came at us like a complete crazy person. My dad's whole demeanor changed. There was no sweet talk in his voice. It was just grab your stuff, we have to go. Forget the cokes. Grab the rods. I could tell by his panic and seriousness that this person was a real threat to us. That things could go wrong. You know crap gets real when dad gets scared. When I was around 6 or 7 years old, a H addict overdosed in the alley behind my building. Some hours later his mother found him and cried hysterically while cradling him in her arms. I remember getting a sick feeling in my stomach, not being able to fully comprehend what I was seeing, yet still feeling uneasy and exposed to a horrible truth. I believe this ensured I would never ever touch H. This image is burned into my brain. When I was 10 I fell and split my chest open on the gate of my childhood home. Not only was the world not safe, but my world at home wasn't safe either. My mom was picking me up from school in 2nd grade. I was sitting in the backseat of the car with one of my friends when some lady came up to the driver window and started yelling at my mom, swearing and screaming. She pulled out a can of pepper spray and sprayed my mom. Then she turned it to the backseat and got me and my friend. I thought school was safe. I thought adults were better than children. I learned the truth this day. The lady's kid stole my brother's Ken Griffey Jr. signed baseball, and my older brother took it back from him, apparently threatening to beat up the kid if he took anything again. In 10th grade there was a car accident that involved 3 people from the grade above me and 1 person from my grade who is now a good friend. They were all in the same car. The one driving was a dude. His GF was in the passenger seat and the other 2 guys were in the back seat. They took a turn going too fast and the car flipped, killing the driver, his GF and throwing the other 2 out of the car, but they survived. It taught me that bad things happen to good people and sometimes people just die. Tomorrow is not a promise and death does not discriminate. My father worked for a large US company and when I was 8 he got a promotion and we moved to Mexico City. This was in the late 70s. A year later the company issued us 24-hour bodyguards. Guns were a rare thing in Mexico back then, but these guys were all armed. Walls around the house were made taller and reinforced doors were added. We had a checklist of questions by the phones in the house detailing what questions to ask in the event of a kidnapping. Several executives were kidnapped and or murdered by strikers and for the next 5 years we didn't go anywhere without security. When I was 4, I asked to go outside for too long. My mom dragged me out of the house, told me to never come back, and locked the door behind me. We lived out of town which meant long windy roads and forest everywhere. My mom always told us about cars hitting kids, wolves and cougars killing kids and small animals, people kidnapping, and I had no clue how to take care of myself. We actually lived in a pretty safe area where most of the crime was pot, but that day I knew my mom didn't care about me and would hurt me if she felt like it. My dad found me outside after work crying, but I never felt safe at home again with her. When I was 3 my parents took me on a road trip to visit my aunt and uncle. It was a 6-hour car ride so I fell asleep in the back. When we got to their house they left me sleeping in the vehicle and went inside rather than taking me out of my car seat. My aunt had been working as a clown and thought it would be a great idea to come out and greet me in her costume. So I woke up in a strange place without my mom or dad and then I see this creepy clown flailing its arms and running towards the car. It was at that moment that I knew the world was a horrifying and untrustworthy place. I still hate clowns to this day. I half expected this to end with your dad getting shot. When I was about 8 I was in Walmart wearing a really cute floor-length skirt and coordinating vest, shopping with my mom after church one day. I had asked my mom if I could go look at Barbies and she said yes, so I went an aisle or 2 over by myself. It was while I was looking at the dolls that a probably 40-year-old man walked by and grabbed my butt. I immediately went and told my mom and we told an employee, but the guy was never found. The day I was told I had cancer, I was 12 at the time, I'm 14 now, and I'm not suspected to ever be going to get better. I hope you kick its butt. I was swinging at a playground by myself while my grandma was talking to a friend on a bench nearby. A grown man sat in the empty swing next to me and began talking to me casually, and then told me I was really pretty. Next, he asked if he could take me to this other cool playground around the corner with better swing sets. Being the oblivious 6 to 8 year old girl, can't remember exact age, I said sure and started walking with him. I didn't get far before my grandma noticed what was happening and grabbed my hand and pulled me away. We went straight to the car and had a long talk about stranger danger. But that was the first time I realized that not every adult was a good person. The earliest memories I have are of my father dragging me out of bed, crap-faced, and beating the crap out of me. It was his way of relieving the stress that comes with being a failure at everything you do and getting your girlfriend knocked up when you're 19. He was too much of a P to nut up and do right by himself or his family. My mother wasn't much better. My sister is a few years younger, so me and my mother got the brunt of his rage. But mostly me. I did have a Rottweiler, though, who protected me once he was big enough to hold his own against a 6 feet 6 inches drunk psychopath. We eventually got out of there, my sister and I, that is. My mother was in my father's corner all the way when I was 7 and were raised by other family members. So for me, the world seemed to be naturally evil. Eventually, though, you come to realize that the world isn't evil, it's just indifferent. People are the real problem. The vast majority of them, anyway. Even at that, they're not evil. They're just too selfish to do the right thing, especially if it in any way involves benefiting someone other than themselves. My older brother, dad and I were having a late afternoon walk. I was 5 years old. My dad always used to have one of those sheathed blade type walking sticks. We also never used to walk without our German Shepherd Rex. I never understood the need for all that until that day. While walking, Rex get all alert and crap. I mean the whole stand still, ears pointed, face of battle I'm gonna frick someone up type deal. We noticed 2 shady looking guys walking towards us on opposite sides. My dad stops. I had no clue what was going on. One tried dashing towards us. Dad slightly unsheathes his blade. Rixie was barking at the other guy. Next thing I know they ran away. Asked my bro while we were going to bed if they were thieves and he told me they were kidnappers. There were a few cases of kidnapping in the past year. I was super freaked. Remember the old lady who sued McDonald's so they wouldn't keep their coffee at insanely high, above boiling temperatures, after she was horribly burned when hers spilled? Well, this happened before that. I was barely 3, still in pull-ups, and my grandma ordered a coffee at McDonald's on our way back from the laundromat. My grandma always put her drinks on the passenger car folder, easier to reach that way. A sharp turn, and the lid, which wasn't properly fastened on, popped off and coffee over the boiling point was now spilled onto tiny little me. The pull-up saved me from the worst of it. Grandma had that off me in a flash and used the clean laundry to wipe off the coffee. So while I still had 3rd-degree burns, I got away free of skin grafts, minimal scarring on my thighs. But it's my earliest memory and I had a lot of issues with fear and anger from that time on. TLDR, I got 3rd-degree burns from McDonald's coffee when I was 3. It's incredible that McDonald's, its lawyers, and their lobby tried to turn the fact that people sued them over their idiotic practices into a media coup for themselves. It took me a while to realize the concept that the world isn't safe. I don't know if it was just me being naive or ignorant. Even when I was 6 and got run over by a truck, almost died and had to spend 3 weeks in the hospital. It didn't really faze me though. I had a quick recovery and it still hadn't hit me. The time I first realized our world is a fricked up place was when I was 16. I got a call that one of my best friends had passed away. I sat there for hours thinking it can't be true. We're young and invincible. How could this happen to someone so close? That was the moment I realized what the real world was, and not the fantasy I had made it out to be. I was 6 and got run over by a truck. It still hadn't hit me. Well, technically. Well, I was born and raised in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. Seeing people getting killed on a daily basis on TV has proven me that the world is a very violent place. Learning that the noises I heard nightly growing up were not from fireworks but actually drive-by shootings. This was in Detroit. Saw my uncle getting ripped apart by a mine. I was 10 at the time. Went to inspect a building site in Kosovo with my dad and my uncle. The local commander didn't make the effort to make sure that all of the mines next to the building were found. He even said that all mines has been disarmed and that you can walk right through it. Well frick. Never trust a bungler with a high rank. I found my 7-year-old sister sleeping in the bathtub when I was 3. I quickly learned what drowning was and that she had slipped into a diabetic coma. My mother was a high school teacher, so when I was in elementary school she left an hour before the bus got there to pick me up. On Mondays and Fridays my grandmother would come by. On Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday I would go to my best friend Joe's house and play Nes until the bus picked us up. When I was in 3rd grade, Joe's single mother drugged him and his brother with sleeping pills, made a goodbye call to her boyfriend, and set the house on fire. Luckily she had taken the pills herself before attempting to set the fire, and her BF contacted the police and fire department. Joey and his brother were treated for smoke inhalation, sent to live with their father, and I never saw them again. Childhood ended that day for me. My earliest memory is of being brought to the hospital after one of my mom's beatings. I was 2 at the time. My mom used to beat us so badly. I still have physical scars from it as an adult. My mom beat us often, and one of her favorite tricks was to hook her engagement ring inside our lips so we would bleed as she smacked us across the face. I'm 18 and Norwegian, and honestly the world feels pretty safe to me. Even though I see wars and stuff on TV, I feel like I'm in a protective bubble. 29 Danish female here. I feel the same way. When I was perhaps 11 or 12, I got permission from my family to ride my bike to the library. It was maybe 1 mile away from our house. Get there, put the bike up, go in and read for a while, come back out, bike equals stolen. I go back in crying, had to call my mom to pick me up. Day to the library was ruined. Much more innocent than the rest of this thread. My elementary school lay behind a railroad embankment, so every morning our school bus had to drive through a small tunnel. One morning there was a teacher of us hanging from the top of that tunnel. The bus almost hit him. 9/11. I grew up in the NYC suburbs, so for us it was even more than just an attack on the country. It was also an attack on us. I had several friends whose parents died and many more who were affected. People who crawled to safety, who happened to call in a sick that day, or who were involved in rescue efforts afterwards. Coming home from elementary school to see my mother crying on the couch with CNN on was an unforgettable experience. Someone I went to kindergarten with was the victim of a serial killer. We were in 2nd grade, though different classes when it happened. There was no announcement at school, and a lot of my peers had no idea it had happened. However, I was a precocious kid who sometimes took a go at reading the newspaper, and the discovery of his remains was a front page story. At first it didn't register. I was like, Mom, look at this. A crazy guy killed someone with the same name as, first name, last name. I could tell it pained her to explain that a kid my age, living only a couple of blocks away, was murdered. Years later, when the city named a park after that young victim, it really upset me to reflect on what being tortured, abused, and killed must have been like for him. As a 2nd grader, I was mostly sad that I'd never run into him on the playground again. Either way, it was his killing that clued me into mortality in general. Growing up Christian, I was able to rationalize at a young age that God needed people to die so he could have more angels in heaven. Dumb I know, but I was younger than 8. When I was 8 my father went to visit Haiti. We live in America but he was born and raised in Haiti, and someone murdered him while he was parked. I was angry for a long time after that because at that age I never had to try to rationalize murder when there was a loving, forgiving Christian God. At that point I decided either this was part of God's plan, which I didn't accept because my family's lives went downhill after that, or that God didn't particularly care. It took me until probably right after high school to give up Christianity. Mother's side of the family is Ethiopian Orthodox, so big decision for me, and I've become more of a pessimist since, but I could always trace it back to finding out my father was never coming home. Bonus stuff. That is also when I had to comprehend what never truly meant, since dad is never coming home was a bomb to drop. Only white kid living in my welfare housing in the black part of town. For your information, it's actually the children that are the worst. Elementary school was heck. By middle school though, most kids seem to realize how wrong it is to pick on someone for their skin color. This is a good question. When I was 4, I was hit by a truck as I crossed the street to play with a friend. Fortunately, the truck stopped just as it hit me and I only needed stitches on my forehead. My mom recounts that I was never the same after that. She would often catch me with a very serious look on my face and in my eye that let her know that I knew that there was something wrong with the world. School sorted that crap right out for me. I went to the school my mum worked at, in an area much nicer than where we lived, with a bunch of snobby rich folk whose kids had all been socializing since they were like 6 months old at the local exclusive sports club. Pretty much from day one they bullied the crap out of me, and encouraged others to do the same. My mum said it was pretty saddening to watch a friendly and trusting 6-year-old slowly turn into a shy, introverted, suspicious teenager. Late found out the kid didn't actually have anything against me at 6, because we were freaking 6 and 6-year-olds don't give a crap about social standing. Their buttholes' parents had told them not to associate with me, not to invite me to parties, and refused to talk to my mum because they didn't like the fact the school had let me attend. The real kicker, it's not even a posh school. We didn't live in a particularly crap area. They weren't that rich and we weren't that poor. Like our earnings were say 60k a year and theirs were 100k. Our house was worth 260k and theirs was worth 450k. They just liked to think they were better than they were. Definitely destroyed my idea that the world was a pleasant and safe place fairly early on. I was 5ish, maybe 6. We were visiting some family friends who picked us up from the airport. So we were taking 2 cars. I was in one with my friend, who I didn't really know much in the beginning, and the rest of my family was in the other car. We were driving along the highway when I see my family's car crumbled in a 4-car accident. One car had rear-ended another. They smashed into that one and then they were smashed into from behind. Thing is, the car that I was in didn't even stop. They just kept driving until their destination. 1 hour. I didn't even know if everyone was okay. I was worried as frick. Didn't want to eat dinner and only felt okay when my family walked in through the door a good 5 hours later. I always wanted to play with my neighborhood kids, because there weren't that many of us where I lived in town. My parents forbid me from playing with any of the neighborhood kids, which I thought was unreasonable. So I snuck out of my yard one time to play at a girl's house who lived nearby. We were having a blast playing with Barbies, but after about 4 juice boxes, I really had to pee. I asked to go to the bathroom, but this little girl told me I couldn't go in while her dad was working in the bathroom. I guess my little kid brain assumed he was a plumber. In reality, he was a drug dealer, and occasionally, after getting his product ready to sell, he would snort some coke, I assume, though I'm not sure, get crazy and beat on his girlfriend and kid. Well, that day must have been a coke day, because that man came tearing out of the bathroom, grabbed his girlfriend by the hair and started hitting her head off of the counter, asking who she was freaking. The little girl I was playing with just turned to me and deadpan asked me to leave and please don't call the police. The saddest part was when I running out the door, I saw her take off her clip-on earrings and tie her hair back, waiting for her turn. As soon as I ran home, I told my dad, who was a cop, what happened, and he just sighed and called it in. I was 7 years old. The earring part of this just makes it so much more brutal. That a little girl would know how to prepare to be beaten breaks my heart. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.